I'm here today with Mark Jackson, who was one of my teammates on the 1971-72 Westfield High varsity basketball team, which was the primary subject of my recent book, A Ball with No Points. And Mark, let's go back to junior high here, because to start with, because I think you were one of the first guys probably to either see or play with both Goski and Novacek, whether it be maybe over Holy Trinity or at Edison. Where did you first see those guys, and like what was your first impressions of them?
So Timmy and I first met Timmy in first grade in 1961 at Holy Trinity. So we went all the way through Trinity together.
Okay.
And I think that, and I'm not the first one to note this, but when we were in elementary school, we did have a basketball team. We competed in CIO tournaments. Like,
oh, cool. All right. Yeah.
We went to one in Asbury Park in the, what was it? What they used to call the big?
Oh, the convention center.
Convention center. We had a CYO tournament in the convention center.
Cool.
And every other team had uniforms, and we just had like gym shorts and t-shirts. Anyway, but anyway.
Yeah.
So Timmy and I go back to 1961, and in elementary school, I don't even know if Timmy was on that team. He wasn't a player metaphorically. Like Steve Sexton was the dominant player, went on to start for Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
Good ball handler. But his father was a high school basketball coach. So he knew things that none of us knew. He was the head coach in Freehold.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But Timmy wasn't a player until like 8th or 9th grade when he was at Trinity. He blossomed.
Yeah.
And I think you probably have stories of him at Gumpert at that time when he was starting to step out on himself and things like challenge John Shoemate down the middle. But in elementary school, he wasn't Timmy Goski yet. He was just another face in the crowd.
Yeah, I know. I remember him from Little League first, because my dad was a coach, the manager of my team, and then I think, well, Tim's dad coached a team. It may not even have been Tim's, because there were so many Goskis he could coach them all on the same team. But I remember him from those days, and so I knew the Goski name because there were a lot of Goskis out there. But I think he was on the relatively small side, back in those days.
Yeah. So the really stout kid that we knew in high school, that wasn't Timmy in elementary school.
Yeah. Right.
And so at Edison in 9th grade, we were really good. Like we beat at home the Roselle team that 2 years later won the Group 1 state championship with Reggie Beard and Jesse Smith and those guys. We beat them. So so Scott and I, Barry Kaufman, Joe Cascione, Peter McGill, and Scott at the time. Scott was Mr. Big in Edison as well. So
9th grade was your first time seeing Scott then, I assume.
You know, that's interesting because I don't have a recollection. You know, so it's funny because at the dinner the other night, the Hall of Fame dinner, I'm sitting with Chris Campbell, and Chris Campbell and I were the starting guards on the 8th grade Edison basketball team in 1968-69.
Wow.
And then the wrestling coach told Chris Campbell that he sucked as a basketball player. Basketball, and the rest is history. But it's true. He remembered that too. He and I were the starting guards. So I don't remember Scott in 8th grade. God, and he'd be pissed at that. But as 9th graders, he became a force. He was bigger than everybody. Had a nice soft turnaround, and he took up a lot of space down low.
All right, so you left Holy Trinity before 8th grade. So you were over to Edison by 8th grade.
So I left after 7th grade, and Timmy stayed until 9th grade. Yeah,
got it. Okay, all right, interesting. So anyway, so then fast forward 1 year. Now it's your sophomore year, and your JV team had a really good year. Combining forces with some of the guys from Roosevelt, BJ and Moose and Cooney. And, I got to see it, not as close as you, because I was on varsity at the time, but it was hard not to notice the sort of the upstart sophomore team come along at 18-4, but you did you did lose 3 to Scotch Plains, and so that had to be. Yeah, I suppose you guys thought of them as your nemesis, just like I did.
Yep. Yep. So that's the first fact of our 10th grade year. Timmy's splash. Like he just made this splash
Yeah.
because for the Trinity people, given his relative anonymity in elementary school, boom, he showed up. And the void that was created was Peter McGale was our starting guard in 9th grade, and they left town. So the space was just wide open for Timmy to come in and be the man, be the guy.
Okay.
There was nobody else around. So mostly what I remember from JV was
we had the same coach, right?
Well, no. So Ed Tyrone was Steve Lee's coach in 9th grade, and then they moved to the high school together.
Okay.
So Stu Carey was our 9th grade coach.
Got it.
And then when we got to the high school, so what I remember mostly about was just a lot of banging down low with Jester, just like beating the shit out of each other, swearing a lot. Mr. Tyrone was a deeply, deeply devout Christian, had very little tolerance for profanity, especially if you took the Lord's name in vain. Like it just, he told me once that my game would improve if my mouth improved. You know, that's quote, an indelible imprint.
Wow.
Bruce Jackson, your game will improve. So yeah, but we were competitive. Ray Schnitzer though was, you know, the source of nightmares.
Yeah,
like he could penetrate, and he always kept this very vacant look on his face. Like there was never any emotion, which made it annoying as hell. Right. So at Edison, he beat us at home. I think I had 22, close game, but he just lit us up. Right. There was nobody that could shut him down, and that proved to be the case when we were in 10th grade as well. But mostly I remember 2 things. I remember the second team of the varsity going in at the beginning of the 2nd and 4th quarters and using up valuable minutes and harassing the hell out of the opponents.
Right.
And I remember just, you know, practice being just ugly for us because it was just like a bunch of slugs just beating the hell out of each other. You know?
Now I'm talking about JV season or the next
JV season. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then Timmy's arrival. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. And I guess I had, you know, I had heard a little bit about Goski coming over from Trinity, but at that point still hadn't really seen him play. So but Alan Diablo had forewarned me. He said, "Watch out for Goski. He's gotten really good." Which so I was kind of mentally prepared for it, and you know, kind of.
But nobody saw that coming. If somebody said, "Yeah, I knew Timmy in 5th grade and I knew he was destined for greatness," they're lying to you.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. So. So anyway, after the JV season, going into your junior year now, you end up being one of 5 guys, I guess, who part of a very successful, highly ranked, and undefeated football team.
And you know, I'm going to take a minute to put a plug in for that team.
That's fine. That's fine. No, because my question is going to be, what was it like to go from that situation, and then you have like probably only 1 day off, and now you're joining, you know, sort of this unproven varsity basketball team. That had to be a shock to the system.
Well, yeah. So just a little plug for the 71 team.
Yeah,
led by John Kerr, who he and Jim Zitch were the most dominant players of my era. Like, just the rest of us just used to bounce off John Kerr. Like there was just nothing you could do with him. He was an indomitable force. Anyway, I hope he sees this and he hears me saying it, because he still gives me that.
I'm glad I never bounced off him. Oh. I used to run into you and thought you were a wall.
Oh my God, he was just So if you had guys like Bobby Dulks and Chris Van Osk and all guys from my year talking about when we were juniors playing against Kerr, we just laughed like there was nothing we could do. But anyway, Tommy Pfeiffer was. So that defense gave up maybe 2 offensive touchdowns the entire year.
Yeah,
just a spectacular defense. Gary Kaler said we played with the best field position we ever played with those guys on defense. So Tommy was a starter on the team. Larry was a backup defensive back. Greg was a starting defensive end. I was a center on offense. So a bunch of large-bodied physical guys, right? Who who had, you're right, had no day. I remember, you know what they used to make us do? They used to make us sit for 5 days, 3 days in the bleachers while you guys practice. There was like this obligatory downtime, but we had to go to practice, but we weren't allowed to play. I think it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think I think it was, I thought it was mostly that Horn wanted to make sure you just kind of picked up on some of the things we had been working on, the
I think it
team
was something.
concepts, but maybe
Yeah,
he
I
was
think it was
just
something.
resting, maybe
Yeah,
he's
imposed
resting
by the
your football
state.
muscles too. I don't know.
Yeah. And so I remember in the fall, like in gym class, fooling around with a basketball and Horn coming over and talking to me. Like, I guess somebody else has said, like, yeah, he was a JV player.
Yeah.
And I have a very distinct memory. I'm in the far corner of the gym just shooting hoops during gym class in football season.
Yeah.
This guy walks over to me and I had no idea who he was. I had some vague sense he was going to be the coach.
Yeah.
But I was utterly a blank slate when it came to Neil Horn coming into the season. Had no feel for him, no background. Okay. I guess he knew what was the guy's name he coached at Ridge.
John Berger.
No, Hummel. Was it Hummel?
Well, I think I think one of the good players he coached was John Berger, who was maybe two or 3 years ahead of my year.
Yeah. Anyway, so I knew there was some big name in his past at Ridge. Blank slate, came in totally cold, didn't know what I was getting into. Right.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a lot more experience than you, but I did meet him at Gumbert that summer. It was
did you?
early in the summer. So I was playing down there and someone introduced him to me. It was probably someone like, Bob Brewster or Ward Gentino, guys that were typically hang down there and watch. But and I'm sure they would have had a chance to meet him, after he got hired. And I got introduced by one of those guys. But then did spend one week at a summer camp that he ran along with Goski and Cooney. So yes, I guess I knew him a little bit, but still.
Where was that camp? Where'd you guys go?
It was somewhere up in the Poconos. It was not the same camp that a lot of us went to in 7th and 8th grade, like the Lehigh Valley one. It wasn't that one, but it was some other one up in the same vicinity that he had run. I think coaches from Verona and then even Clarkstown, New York were there, because that's why we ended up scrimmaging in Clarkstown.
That's right. I remember that. They had the kid that went to South Carolina.
Yeah, Bob Mathias. Yeah,
right.
So there was he had some previous connections with those coaches. So I think that's how we ended up at that camp that summer. But anyway, so all right. So it was a little bit, you're coming in kind of blind to that season.
Yep.
But what were your other than that, what were your expectations of us as a team? Because obviously you had the great JV season before you, and I don't know if you knew anything about the senior class. Myself and Pfeiffer and Larry Simmons was probably pretty much an unknown to you, I suspect.
Well, right. So you guys, when you were juniors, it was Rodney McSween and Kevin McGlynn and Ted Maverick Dennis and Coulter John, and you guys were second fiddles, right?
Yeah.
You weren't headliners, and so I respected you all, but you guys taking us to the promised land. Sorry, I didn't see that coming. I would not have called that at all.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been us, but we would obviously be part of the team, but you had your other the Goski and Novacek and all those guys. So
yeah, but that's interesting because I don't know. I didn't, at least. I don't know that it's hard when you're a sophomore to project yourself on the varsity level and imagine.
It is.
So I don't know that my head went there. It's also the case that football was my primary preoccupation.
Right. Yeah.
So, I played at Gumpert, but I didn't play Gumpert like you guys did.
Yeah.
Like when I listened to you rattle off all these guys that are in your Rolodex from your Gumpert days, I don't have that, right? I I wasn't the basketball gym rat that I should have been.
No, that makes sense. Everybody has their own
Yeah.
circumstances. But anyway, but once we got into the scene, is there anything you remember about the way Horn ran his practices,
Yeah.
or the way he coached, or anything, yeah. So any specific Horn memories that stick out to you?
So I remember thinking, and so I played for Gary Kaler, right? And Gary Kaler is like his middle name. He and Zimmer, their middle names were meticulous, like no detail, right? And so I came to think of Horn in that kind of way. Like practice was never this open-ended free-for-all. It was at the other end of the continuum. It was, he had it scripted, right? So I came to appreciate that over time, that there were things that we were working on. There were drills that were tailored to remedy things. So he was clearly a thoughtful guy, right? And I knew to think that because I come off the Kaler Zimmer experience, and there was nothing left. There was nothing ever left to chance,
right?
And I think he was very much a part of that tradition. Probably the other thing in practice, though, is I always guarded Larry. Bobby always guarded Scott. I don't know that I ever guarded Scott in practice. Maybe I did, but it was like, when the first five went out, I went to Larry. Bobby went to Scott, and I'm proud of Larry to say that in 5 months of trying to bang the shit out of him, right, and do whatever I could to like get one leg up on this varsity co-captain starter. Yeah. I never succeeded. I could never take him off the dribble. Never. He had great feet. I don't know that I should probably say that to him. I don't know that I've ever said that to him. But he's got this really kind of unassuming demeanor, right? This kind of slow.
Yeah, it was easygoing.
He had great feet. He could cut me off and make me reverse my dribble, like always. I never beat him to the basket. And then the fact that Bobby and I took great pride in beating the shit out of the two starters to the degree that we could, because that was our badge of distinction, is that we would whack these guys, because that was fun for us.
Well, that's I remember a lot of half court drills where 4-on-4, 5-on-5, where you're working on some team offensive thing maybe, and you'd run through a play until the shot went up, but then the rebound would ensue, and it was madness on the boards. I remember.
You have to say that Timmy was in the mix of that, because Timmy, the last thing Timmy was shy.
Oh yeah,
right.
Well, he was in the mix, and then he'd be uttering trash talk under his breath, and BJ would inevitably burst out in laughter. It's just, and he'd go from laughter to being pissed off, like if he got beat on a play, he'd like start cursing it, and like he'd want to start the next play right away to get back at the guy. He was great. He was like intent. It was like this self-driven intensity that he
absolutely right
come up with.
Right. So the way you guys gelled, right? Here's an enduring memory. You want an enduring memory? So we're at Elizabeth in the first week of January. 7-0, whatever we were, ranked in the county, and this was the first big match. And all I remember, I don't even remember when you showed the video of Watson in the cylinder and calling a dunk and calling it back. I didn't remember that. What I remembered was Monty Jones hawking you from end line to end line. He was in your grill, right? From as soon as the ball came up, and everybody else just cleared out, and you had to bring the ball up against this water bug, this guy who was on you.
Yeah.
You didn't wither. You didn't turn the ball over, not once, I don't think, in that game.
Yeah. I
Ask him
think
about
I think I threw at least a pass away under pressure,
But
but he didn't steal the ball from me.
that's my point. He didn't pick you at all. He
Yeah.
didn't pick you at all. And if there's anybody who was equipped to pick you, it would have been him. And
Well,
nothing.
yeah. Yeah, that one, no, I remember that very vividly because I think Horn surprised everybody the day before when he basically announced that I'm going to bring the ball up, and I just remember looking at Tim and you know, he obviously was one surprised and two not very happy about it.
Yeah.
But you know, I think Horn was he was probably thinking, well, Timmy's going to get caught up in a one-on-one duel with these
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Timmy just had to get picked once, and he would have lost himself. He would have got off his game.
Yeah.
But I think of that for me. That's that series that you holding up under that kind of pressure for the entire game. That's one of the signature moments of the year because we were on the road, hostile environments, no real history on our side.
Yeah. Well, what was also neat about that game and even the film was the very first play. We win the tap, which was one good thing, but then we go right into this motion offense that we typically would not start a game in that. It was saved for special situations, but he had to start in that offense. And the very first possession we run it through, we're like going through about 4 times, and on the 4th time through, I cut across the lane, and Willie Hobson, I think at that point, is on me, but he's trailing because he gets picked off.
Yep.
I come right across the lane. Larry just throws the ball into me, and I get a little 3-foot bank shot, and it actually worked to perfection. It was like the way the offense was designed against the top ranked team in the state. It was just a perfect example of if you execute something right, good things will happen.
Yep.
But yeah, so that was a good a good thing, a good example of what Horn brought to us.
Yeah.
And
what did Steve Lee said to me over the weekend? He said Horn was 29 at the time.
Yes. Yeah, he was.
Right?
It is right. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Well, just think about it. I mean, that means now he's like
80.
He's 80, and that's I heard that. So yeah. No, that's true. He was he went into coaching pretty much right away after college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know sometimes those guys, when we're that age,
no, exactly,
everybody seems older.
Yeah, he seemed like my father, right?
Now our trainer, what's his name? DeAndrea. Yeah, he was more like 40 or 41 or so. He was clearly a little bit older, but not a youngster like Horn was. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I jotted down here was, as you kind of already touched on it, but as primarily a reserve that season, you're playing a bigger role in practices. And one of the nice things about a lot of fans don't get to see is that in practice, pretty much everyone's an equal, whether you're doing individual drills or 5-on-5. Everybody's getting a chance to compete. And some of those, I just remember practices being kind of intense. When we got into any kind of drills, there was the competition was always there, and you had even guys like well, I mean, pretty much everybody's always fighting for playing time, but Cooney and Steve Lee go at it quite a bit. And
the fact that those two guys talk today, I'm really surprised by, right? Yeah. But the other thing that's worth noting, I think, and this is a new thought, that it's not hard to find amongst guys that sit on the bench people who are deeply resentful about the fact that they're not getting playing time, right? And they cause some kind of shit, and they're acting out in some kind of way. And I don't remember that.
No, I don't remember
anybody
at
becoming
all.
a problem.
I don't remember at all. And you know, I think, you know, you certainly could have had it with between Steve Lee and Mike Cooney, who were, you know, certainly vying for playing time, and maybe even Moose at you know, one of the forward positions.
Yeah, but
I had no inkling of that. Now years later, in more recent years, you know, Steve Lee confided in me that yeah, he was, you know, he was kind of upset that he hadn't been getting more playing time, and towards the end of the season, he finally did. Um, and I was always kind of thankful. I mean, especially in retrospect, looking back, that he didn't, you know, kind of sour on the team and
exactly.
you know, just
Yep.
up and quit. And I found out later his parents are going through a divorce during that time, and he's actually, they're already split up, and he's having to live in different places and stuff like that.
I had no idea.
And, yeah, so that's I mean, his was it was just really challenging circumstance for him. So
yeah.
so the fact that he, you know, whether he, you know, felt, regardless of what he felt on the inside, he in terms of his outward performance, he was never he was never dogging it or anything. It was always you know, full on, and you know,
we all wanted to play. We all wanted to play, but nobody ever dared stepping over that line and made it about themselves, as opposed to.
And then thank God, you know, in the semis, you know, I get hurt, and he gets to play basically the entire second half, I believe, and guarding their guy Kirk Scott, who scored like 26, but almost most of them in the first half, you know.
Semis of what? The counties or the states?
No, this is the states, you know, against Hackensack. That's when I sprained my ankle in the first half.
Yeah.
So he ended up playing, you know, maybe the entire, most of the second half in my spot, and pretty much shut down that guard who had been killing us up to that point. So yeah, it was great. You know, I was really happy for him, given everything he had endured up to that point.
Yep. Because I think in ninth grade at Edison,
I know,
he was the guy.
I know. Well, he was in my sophomore year when you were still at Edison.
Yeah,
he and I were the starting guards on the JV, but he was the lead guy. Now, I'm trying to remember who scored more, him or Pfeiffer, but they were the two leading scorers of the team. And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I think you know, he kind of just more or less stopped growing after that year. To me, that's the primary thing that held him back. You know, after sophomore year, he just, you know, the rest of us continued to grow, but he probably kind of got stuck around 5'9". I think he was probably 5'9" in 10th grade, and then
I think that's probably right. Yeah,
maybe stopped at 5'10" or something like that. But did I mean, any other? I mean, you mentioned the Jefferson game. Any other specific game situation?
Well, so here's one.
Remember?
We talked about this at the Hall of Fame dinner, and actually this goes back to your initial question about reflections on Neil.
Yeah.
So we're away at Rawway, and we're blowing them out.
Yeah.
And I think the second team guys played virtually the entire fourth quarter. And it was, you guys had put up 95 when we got in, and it was 95 when the game ended, right? Because he would not let anybody take a shot. And all we did was run the offense through and through. And you want to talk about frustration? Holy shit! Yeah. Like, right? Because this wasn't garbage time. This was the if not the entire fourth quarter, the most of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
At the time, I was annoyed with distance and having been a coach and a parent and an adult. Yeah. You thought, but there's a real strong moral stance on his behalf, right? He's not going to put 100 points on the board, right, on anybody, and he could easily have done that. But that was a line, that was a bridge too far for him. It was not a line he was going to cross, and I admire that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Actually, no, I remember it too, but actually we had 98
or whatever.
I mean, he got up. Maybe it started at 95, but he got to 98, and then he probably called timeout. And,
yeah, he's right. And you can imagine saying Bobby that he can't take a shot. Like, holy shit, you know. But
yeah,
so that was the good part about it. So I remember saying to my father at one point that I've never played for an idiot. You know, I've never played. And I'm Little League, high school, college was somebody who had no perspective on the larger agenda, right? It was just in it to win, and you know, I'd never played for somebody like that. And mostly, you know, I take my cues from Zimmer and Kaler, and then Horn came along, and he took a really unfashionable stance. By saying, we're not running this up, right?
Right.
I appreciate that more as the years have gone on.
Yeah. So, did anything kind of surprise you about that season? I mean, you know, maybe just our overall success, but I mean,
yeah. So I guess in some ways we fit the formula. You know, you had a superstar and a bunch of strong other guys, but in general, we came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like all the talking heads, they were not looking at Westfield High School to make that kind of dramatic splash. And it's not like we got hot at the end of the season either, right? No. And some lucky games. This was a steady, what was 25-2, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still, you know, when I think about it, it's an extraordinary accomplishment that this relatively, you know, unknown, unrecognized group of guys came together and achieved at that high level. And beating Jefferson twice, neither time at home, right?
Yeah.
Beating Hackensack on the road, right? There are lots of places it would have been very easy to falter, and we didn't.
Well, yeah, especially with all I mean, we had, you know, several fourth quarter comebacks. I mean, even in the first, you know, 10 games, I think we had 4 fourth quarter comebacks.
Is that right?
6 points or more.
Wow.
Or maybe there were second half comebacks, but they were all, I mean, you know, Jefferson were down 7 in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
And Colonia was, I think, 6. Yeah. So there were, it was, in fact, I mean, I think we had, you're right. I mean, no one expected us to do what we did. And it was kind of a perfect storm for us. We had a lot of these factors just work in our favor. You know, we had Horn come to town, who was, you know, a good planner and very thorough, and was able to, you know, was good at managing our prima donnas, you know, and make sure they played within the team system. You know, I mean, that to me, that was a big part of it, because, you know, Novacek and Goski were supplying a lot of horsepower, but the seniors maybe provide a little more balance.
Absolutely.
Having that extra year difference made us a little more equal, and gave us better balance as a unit.
So he told the story a couple times, and I think I've heard him every time I'm with Horn. The story comes out about, you know, game starting, Timmy launching one, he'd taken Timmy out, put him at the end of the bench. 3 minutes later, he'd go like this, like, "You ready to do what I tell you to do?" Yeah, right. And so the fact that, to use your word, Timmy had prima donna potential.
Yeah.
Right? And Horn walked that line of kicking his ass when it needed to be kicked, right? So he wasn't going to, like, give him the star treatment. And at the same time, he knew he was the guy, right? And he had to have some range. So for a 29-year-old guy to have figured all that out, that's good coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of coaches, you would think, just give in to the star
Exactly.
player. Say let this guy, you know, default to this guy, you know, when we get in trouble or something, or when we got a big challenge. But
or I don't want to piss him off, I want to protect his ego. He yanked him.
Or be afraid of the parents, you know.
Exactly.
Fortunately, there was none of that. And
boy, that was different.
In fact, I was shocked when I was watching that Scotch Plains video, which was one of the 3 films that survived all the years. And just, that was another game. We went down 6 early in the fourth quarter after having a nice lead in the first half. And I think Tim came out with like 6 minutes to go and he never went back in. I just couldn't believe
Oh,
it.
is that right?
It's the third game of the season. And to me, this was like the game I had circled on my calendar, if we can get past Scotch Plains, our season's going to be made.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. He
yeah,
didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. Is that right?
Cooney?
No.
No.
He took Timmy out?
Yeah, he took Timmy out with about 6 minutes to go. Scotch Plains had just gone up by 6. So we were ahead, had a comfortable lead at halftime. We blew it in the third quarter, and then early in the fourth quarter, they go from like a 2-point lead to 6-point lead. Warren calls timeout. Timmy's out, Cooney's in, and well, as far as I believe Mike was in the rest of the way. I mean, the film ran out with like a minute something left, but from all the articles and stuff, it was pretty clear Tim was not back in there. And in fact, I asked him about it recently, and he said, yeah, I went home and just cried after that Scotch Plains game. Because remember, he had a terrible first game at Berkeley Heights. He fouls out, and then this is the third game. He's like, this was not a good start for Tim. He's probably questioning this transfer from Holy Trinity or something. I don't know, but fortunately, and then 2 days later, Horn didn't start him against Union, but then he came in and started kicking butt, and then after that, it was like he clicked into he bought into Horn's Horn's rules and started producing big time. But
very good.
Yeah. So did it did it take a certain amount of time, in terms of, after the season or years after the season to kind of appreciate like what we had done? Or I mean, maybe it was even decades. I don't know. When you're 17, you don't, sometimes you don't appreciate what you accomplish.
So, that's why I always appreciated the title of the book, right? Because you cannot step into, in those days, to step into Westfield athletics, there was only one topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Just like that succession of, that 5 years of undefeated. I mean, just, it was crazy. And in the midst of all that, 71-72 team wins the state championship. They didn't like go 16-9, right? And like make to the semifinals of the counties. We ran the table. And always carried that with me as a badge of distinction, even amongst the basketball guys. Like I'm still in contact with Chris Vanoska. I like emailing him and saying, yeah, I'm going to go to the Hall of Fame dinner because I was on the basketball team for that, right? Like, that's just the counter narrative is so strong and so profound.
Yeah.
Take me, I think I was hit with the significance of that pretty early on. It didn't take years because that had never happened before. Nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
And the other beauty of the time is at the time in football, there were no state champions.
Right. Yeah.
They were not decided on the field. They were
it was just rankings, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It wasn't until 75 that they started the playoffs started.
Playoff system.
So this was a championship that people actually earned their way to, right? They earned their way on the field, and that made it, I think even more special because there was no debate. The Daily Journal, the Newark Evening News, the Star Ledger, there was none of that. We just won the Group 4 state championship. That was it.
It's funny you mentioned Chris. Does I've got a couple of football pictures in the book, and I have him blocking the kick against I guess it's Montclair, where they could have had a game-winning field goal. He's in it. Make sure you tell him.
Who blocked the field goal?
Chris Vanoska. Is that how you say his name?
Vanoska. Yeah, he had a hell of a junior year. He Neil Chamberlain and John Kerr were the stalwarts of that defense.
I'll have to here you won't be able to see very well, but there's the kick
Oh, look
against.
at that.
Yeah, in fact, the caption is Westfield's Vinoska blocks Montclair's game-winning field goal
Shit,
attempt.
I should tell him that.
Oh yeah, it's I got this literally out of off of game film that Bruce Johnson lent me. He had a couple of
wow.
CDs. I think of this game and maybe the Nutley game. And
So here's the story there that Diomble hurts his shoulder against Nutley, and
yeah,
Montclair the next week was John Brown Jr.
right.
first running assignment, and he hits Chamberlain in the end zone on the run with the sole touchdown of the game, and we win 7-6.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. That's yeah, but you should mention that to him.
Yeah, no, I will. I definitely will.
And
that's the other thing. I want to get an updated copy of the book, the one that has Greg's
oh yeah,
memorial in it. So
yeah, I didn't realize the earlier version just we hadn't gotten that in yet, the preliminary version, but it's certainly it's been in all the ones that.
So can I go? Is there?
Yeah,
money.
Yeah, just yeah, go to aballwithnopoints.com.
I can order online. Okay,
absolutely, and make sure I'll email you there's a code you should use so you get the discount because you got.
Okay.
I'll email it to you as soon as we're done.
Yeah.
But one other thing about, I don't know if you've heard this, you may not have, but something I realized after I had finished the book, kind of an interesting stat, which is almost unbelievable. And you know how we were the team that won both a high percentage of our games, but also won a lot of close games. And so I started thinking, I say, and looking at our, the actual scores of games. So we actually, we won, over 90% of our games, and we won more than a quarter of our games by 2 points or less.
Wow.
And so I started checking, well, what other teams have done that? Now it's a little hard to get data on high school teams, going back that far. But college teams with the internet, you can actually research. You can go back, like that far for most college programs. Websites that have. And I literally only found one other team that did that, high school or college.
Wow.
It was the 1985-86 Bradley Bears that had Hersey Hawkins.
Hersey Hawkins, absolutely, I remember.
They went 32-3.
Yeah.
They won 10 games by 2 points or less, which was, again, more work. But then if you add one other condition, that if the team did those two things and won their last game, we're the only team that did it. So literally, we really were the cardiac kids. We won almost all our games, and we did it in dramatic fashion, which so I probably should have had that stat in our book, but maybe I'll that will be a post-mortem. That
very good, very good.
So asking any particular thing? Well, you mentioned the title of the book. Anything else in the book?
Yeah. So here's
brought back any memories.
So at the Hall of Fame dinner, I'm sitting with Larry, Steve Lee, and Dave Phillips.
Yeah.
On the other half of the table were Spud, Boo Bowers, and their point guard, a guy named Billy Kane, who I didn't know. But so anyway, so Billy Kane at some point says, so I've known him for like 5 minutes now, right? Yeah. So to dinner, he says, how do you guys, like, you guys are still together? Like, how do you do this? Okay. And I say to him, and it was a new thought, I said, it's because we have a den mother. And he looks at me and I said, Steve Reddy, he keeps us together, right? And shepherds us has shepherded us through the years together. And that's the only, and Billy Kane looks at Boo Bowers and says, we need a den mother. Because apparently they've like fractured, like they don't hang together like we do. So I think that I'll leave you with that thought, that the way you've kept us together through the years, that's been very meaningful. Because would I have kept up with Bobby and Dave and Mike? Probably not. Probably not.
Well,
but
two things about that though. It's a lot easier to kind of play that role when you have the kind of season that we did, right? I mean, if it didn't end successfully, it's much harder. You know, this is not the incentive or the mutual good feeling to want to.
I'll grant you that.
So there's that, and also, but the other thing was, you know, a lot of it's more recent. I mean, we had the 2000 reunion, but that was driven by the Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah.
And I think it was fortunate that happened. It was a good, that was a chance for us to kind of re-get together after, you know, 18 years, I think, before then. But, you know, this more recent one, the first, you know, in 2018, you know, so after the first one in a long time since our induction, you know, it was you know, partly driven by, you know, what Tim went through with his boys, and Tom Pfeiffer with, you know, with his battle with cancer. And, you know, when I, you know, and then I met Scott down in Florida, and then, you know, we're talking and we're just thinking, you know, we really should try and get together again. I felt bad not having been in touch with Tim for so long, and then hearing that news about his boys.
Yeah.
So that was really the start of it. So in some sense, it was, you know, realizing that some of us had gone through some hardships, and we, you know, we just needed to touch base. And then once we did, everybody kind of wanted to get back together.
Yeah,
So
it was
that was the beginning.
Right, but can we just take it? Can you just acknowledge the fact that you are a den mother, and it's that you have filled very, very well, and it's been very meaningful for us, because, like, shit, we're all pushing 70, and we still get together to talk about. Remember that play in the third quarter, that time we played Berkeley? You know, like, that's delicious at this stage of our lives. So I appreciate that.
You've probably heard the saying, you know, the older we get, the better we used to be.
No, absolutely. It's, I just want to tell my wife, she said, where are you going? I said, this is another edition of the Liars Club. That's what this is.
Yeah, so maybe this is just a good example of that. But we have to add, but you know what? But hey, we won it back then, so we really were that good. At least we can. At least we can make that claim.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right.
All right. Well, listen, this has been great, Mark. Thanks.
This is good.
Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.